3 years ago, I set out to construct the most powerful nootropic stack for focus, motivation, and sheer cognitive horsepower. I logged hundreds of hours, sampled endless amounts of cognitive performance chemicals, and ran beta tests with soldiers from the United States Army. And after massive experimentation and ruthless trial and error, my work had finally paid off. I found what I was looking for.
Boom. Hope you like the commercial. So oh, by the way, fast forward a minute. We're going to start doing this in the beginning of videos to get to the content if you don't want to hear us talk a minute about Cortex. The interesting thing, I was explaining this to somebody who, hit us up and was like, look, I want to try the stack. I just want to know some sort of background history about you, why you created the stack, this sort of thing. People want to know all kinds of information. That's cool. We have a chat on the website where people can ask questions. And the one thing I explained to this guy was, this was the stack that I was taking when I was building this national iOS device services company, because I wasn't always the founder of Cortex Labs, the global cognitive performance enhancing nutraceutical company. I owned an iPad touch technology replacement company. That's primarily what we did. We'd have corporate customers, schools send us their iPads when they broke, and we would give them discounts versus what they'd pay for Apple to going to Apple, and we would get these companies to save 25, 50 grand a year, because they'd have 1,000 students with 1,000 iPads that the school issued to them that, like 400 of the students would break their iPads, break the glass or something. We would save them all this money. And, in that company, I was working 18-hour days every day, like 7 days a week. I'd wake up, I'd just go to the company HQ. We always had devices to repair. We had a retail spot in addition to that. So there was always stuff coming in. I was always in meetings. I was always doing sales stuff. My brain had to be on point. I was taking basically the Cortex stack at the time to make me do it, to allow me to do it. I had worked through formulation and trying a bunch of other ingredients, then came back to the stack through the formulation process. And it was allowing me to crank out 18-hour days, to have like pristine focus, pristine verbal fluency, to sell and be confident, be verbally effective and convey confidence to people. It was allowing my brain to have endurance to work through all that stuff. It was allowing me to have creativity. It was allowing me to have good, solid working memory. And then eventually, the compounds that I was taking, which really were uridine monophosphate, CDP choline, and low-dose artichoke extract, we put in the Cortex stack to formulate what's being called the only pre-made nootropic stack that works. It works on basically many neurotransmitters in the brain, almost all of them except for glutamate. Livecortex.com, where it's being called the only pre-made stack that actually works. Don't gloss over it. Pretty great stack. I think you're going to like it. Okay, so Noopept and Phenylpiracetam. That's one of the things that we discuss in the Smarter, Better, Faster Nootropics book that's coming out. It's launching on the 30th, where we discuss all my stacks, everything I've ever tried that works, nootropics philosophy, cycling strategy, everything you wanted to know about nootropics, questions answered, these sorts of things. And we do talk about my favorite stacks, the stacks that I've refined over almost a decade that just work, generally applied to mostly everybody. They're very effective stacks. And one of them is combining phenylpiracetam and Noopept. So the answer is yes, you absolutely can combine phenylpiracetam and Noopept, and the doses that I generally recommend in doing this would be 75 milligrams phenylpiracetam and 15 milligrams of Noopept. For some people, whether it's that the racetam is causing them to use more acetylcholine in their brains and they require more of it, or it's some other unknown mechanism, they're going to require to have more available acetylcholine in the brain. In this particular case, I wouldn't shoot for alpha GPC or CDP choline. I always just sort of shoot for tricholine by tartrate first and do it in 300 to 500 milligram quantities. It's not going to be acutely noticeable and super bioavailable. More gut bacteria is going to eat the choline, but it isn't going to fuss with the subjective acutely noticeable effects of the phenylpiracetam and the Noopept, which is why you want to take choline by tartrate versus those other ones, which will come in and sort of start to fuss with the effects, maybe positively for some people, but in a lot of cases negatively for others. Those biologically available precursors to acetylcholine are awesome. They're incredible. We've got one in Cortex, it's CDP choline, but taken in high doses in conjunction with other things, it just opens up more of a possibility for side effects. So that's the general dose range: 75 milligrams phenylpiracetam, 15 milligrams Noopept. 300 to 500 milligrams choline bitartrate. If you don't need the choline source and that's something you'll have to gauge, you can just remove the choline bitartrate completely. I would say that, yeah, I mean, this is a powerful stack. To give you an idea of sort of the spectrum of effects, phenylpiracetam is very stimulatory. It's almost kind of like taking an analog of modafinil for something, just not, it doesn't last quite as long. It's a little heavier, it seems. For some people, it gives them kind of a body energy. It doesn't really do that for me. And that's sort of the gist of phenylpiracetam. I have always gotten working memory benefits when I take phenylpiracetam, and that's probably because it's, it's also working on releasing acetylcholine in the hippocampus of the brain, which is very memory centric. So you've got mental energy, working memory, and I think as a direct result, you're getting a motivated effect. So those are probably the three standout effects: working memory, lots of mental energy, and the drive to do work when you take phenylpiracetam. Noopept on its own is basically working memory, verbal fluency, stimulation. So as a result, you might get some motivation out of it. But the combination of the two works on, it's really a cholinergic cocktail, right? An acetylcholine cocktail that is likely, emboldened in the frontal lobes of the brain, which is where a lot of your executive thinking is. That it compounds on one another. Those compounds really do stack very, very well together. So if you're going to try this stack, expect to have basically the full spectrum of nootropic effects for quite some time. Me, normally lasts 2 to 3 hours. I'll still feel and notice working memory, particularly after hour 3 or 4, but then it sort of starts to descend after that, and by hour 5, I'm kind of back to normal. But this is an incredibly powerful stack. It's a good synergy looking at the mechanisms. I've used it I can't even count, innumerable times over the years. Like, it's one of my favorite combinations to put together. We're going to start talking a lot more about specific combinations, because now going through this book and reading, like just brain vomiting all the stuff that's worked for me over the years, I'm realizing we got to talk about some of this stuff more. And in case you were wondering, look, does phenylpiracetam stack with Noopept, and in what doses, and what can I expect? 100%, and everything we talked about is what you should expect. It's a great stack to try. Give it a shot.